This is Nata, one of the central characters involved in the Monster Hunter Wilds story, and would you be surprised if I told you that a lot of people really hate this kid? Like, hate his guts? Yeah, you be surprised. The internet not liking a child character in a video game? I almost couldn't believe my eyes when I saw all of the threads on Reddit. And the kicker is that Nata was actually fine as a character for like 90% of the game. Heck, I actually enjoyed his presence as part of the story for the first 95% of the game. Then they just absolutely nuked his likability in a single scene, which killed any amount of goodwill that a lot of people had towards him. This is how to destroy a character in 60 seconds. But first, a quick warning, this will have spoilers for the story of Monster Hunter Wilds, because of course I'll be complaining about Nata's Will Smith moment, which occurs quite literally right before the final boss of the game, as well as just other bizarre narrative moments involving the child that are incredibly confusing and make me personally dislike his character. Less dislike his character itself and more just how they handle his development in the game, especially in regards to how the other characters interact with him. Consider this a very rough amateur character analysis by a guy slowly losing his grip on reality. The story in Monster Hunter Wilds is better than in most of the previous games, but ultimately Monster Hunter is more of a gameplay-focused series about beating monsters to death with a giant stick and then turning them into a new pair of boots, so it's not some kind of sin for the story to have some problems, or even for it to get spoiled. I mean, it's kinda there, but also not really. I'm just here to beat a giant monkey to death with a frozen fist. So, to Sparknotes the story for people who might not know this, if you do know this, I guess you can skip it, but it starts off with the Hunters Guild finding Nata collapsed in a desert and rescuing him. They find that, oh no, his village was attacked by a monster known as the White Wraith, which was previously thought to be extinct, and that he escaped. Years later, the guild finally authorizes an investigation into the region and a search for Nata's village and his people, as the area that they found him in is known as the Forbidden Lands, a region that has been isolated for the last 2,000 years and was previously thought to be uninhabited. During the expedition, you immediately run into some people that are riding a bird dragon and they're under attack and they need help. So you help them, they take you to their village, you ask them if they know about Nata's people, and they have no idea. They tell you to go look in a nearby forest. In the forest, you meet a tribe of cat-like things known as the Woodwuds. They don't know about Nata's people either, so you kill more monsters. Eventually, you end up at another village that Kunafa trades with. This village is built around an ancient forge and is named Azuz, and they don't know about Nata's people either. But Nata does mention that while escaping his village, he went through a cave, to which the people of Azuz are like, damn, a cave? Yeah, we got a lot of caves here. We do like minerals and mining and stuff, that's like a big part of our culture, so yeah, I can show you some caves. And by some actual biblical tier miracle, the random cave that they show you just happens to be the one that Nata traveled through. More monster killing later, you find his village. There's also some weird monsters you fight on the way there. They're kinda like the monsters you fought normally, but a little bit different. After getting to his village, you finally return him to his people and you get a lore dump. Key points is that an ancient civilization created artificial monsters to do their bidding. Nata's people are called the Keepers, and they stayed behind and isolated after the fall of the civilization in order to watch over the artificial monsters, which are called Guardians. The weird monsters you fought on the way here, as well as the White Wraith, are Guardians, and the White Wraith's actual name is Arkveld. And after the fall of the ancient civilization, all of these Guardians went dormant, but in recent years they've started to reawaken, which is what happened to Arkveld, and then he attacked Nata's village and killed a fuck ton of people. And then there's a little bit more than that, but that's the basics you need to know for me to complain about Nata. Now to start, personally, I actually quite like Nata as a character. He's just a kid from an isolated village that's trying to make sense of a world that's much bigger than anything he's ever known in his life. A common complaint I see is why you're bringing a child with you everywhere when you're hunting these monsters, and there is actually a pretty decent reason for you to do so. Beyond the general, oh, Alma, who's like this handler guide that you have with you that gives you permission to hunt monsters. Oh, he's teaching him about biology and the ecosystem and stuff, and he's always sticking with her on the quests and learning about stuff off camera. At least for the first bit of the game, searching for the White Wraith is a key part of the game, and Nata is the only person who has ever seen it and can confirm that it is the same monster that attacked his village. So it's pretty necessary to have him around whenever you're doing something, or searching for clues, which is usually when you're getting attacked by other monsters when a lot of the hunts in the game take place. The other time he would be necessary is post heading through the cave system, because it becomes pretty necessary to have Nata guide you through the caves in the direction that he went through them in order for you to not get lost and find the way back to his village. Because I mean, it's a giant cave system. You'd kind of need him to guide you through it in the right direction. And even outside of that, just having him travel with you to spot any landmarks that he may recognize from when he left his village and was wandering around for days would be helpful. So there's really only a couple of hunts in the game where it actually wouldn't be necessary to have him with you, but he essentially just serves as additional help and as an assistant to Alma during these quests when your hunter goes hunting. Since in the story you often have to deal with defending people, I mean that's why you're hunting the monsters. Usually they are a threat to people or something else nearby. You're not just hunting them down for no reason, at least most of the time. So he can help lead people to safety while the hunter takes care of business. I mean, Alma is just as much of a non-combatant as Nata is. It's just that your hunter is an absolute Giga Chad who will easily draw the aggro from any monster because they're just such a threat. So adding another non-combatant to the list isn't that much of a problem. That small detail aside, the one moment that really made people dislike him as a character though, is the moment right before the penultimate hunt of the game when you fight against the Guardian Arkveld. You finally find Arkveld and he's chilling on top of a massive pile of corpses of creatures that he's murdered and just shredding them to pieces, desperately trying to feed. Even though he's not able to due to being a guardian, he was built to not have to eat. He just absorbs energy from the natural surroundings to stay alive, and he also does not die of old age. So yeah, finding this incredibly strong aggressive creature just on top of a pile of corpses, pretty sketchy territory. But then Nata does this.
We can't let this go on.
There's no other way.
What do you mean? I'm sorry. Arkveld has become a threat to the continued existence of this ecosystem. It must be put down. No! Please. Please!
Nata.
If anyone should be angry, it's me. And I hate that it happened. This is the first thing it ever got to decide for itself. To be free, to live strong. Please, don't do this. I'm begging you. It can't control itself.
The path we must take is clear.
For the continued preservation of this ecosystem, the Guild authorizes you to slay the Guardian Arkveld.
Acknowledged.
No, please! There has to be another way! It finally got its chance to live!
Why? Before this point, Nata had had a pretty consistent hatred of Arkveld to the point of doing really dumb stuff, like trying to throw a rock at it when you saw it fighting the apex predator of the plains, which is a giant electric railgun dragon. Then, when your hunter has to hold him back from doing such a stupid thing, he then begins to cry and blames the hunter for not going out there and killing the Arkveld right then and there. Why? And I mean, this moment kind of doesn't completely come out of nowhere. Earlier during the Keeper info dump, Nata learns his people's history. He gets very conflicted on how he feels.
Despite the loss of many lives, our only option is to continue watching over the Guardians still here. It is the destiny that we have inherited from...
Tashin, out there, I saw many things. Many people, creatures, all living life to the fullest. Life. Is that what you call this? Constructed husks they can't even eat? Locked away when they're no longer needed? Arkveld. All it wanted was to be free! And I don't know know which of us is worse.
What do you mean, which of us is worse? This isn't even a close comparison. Who is worse, the people who gave up their freedom and stayed behind to watch over the immortal man-made monstrosity so that they could establish their own ecosystems in peace, instead of just, committing mass genocide and just killing all of the Guardians, which was the other option? Or the insane, hyper-aggressive murder dragon that's going literally insane and is a threat not only to the ecosystem of the current Guardians, but also to all of the surrounding ecosystems as well, as its unique anatomy allows it to absorb energy and survive even away from the ruins of the ancient civilization where all of the Guardians are stuck, because that's kind of the only way that they're able to get enough energy to survive off of. And then your hunter says this.
Nata. If things were different, you wouldn't have this unique perspective. But you do.
And I'm like, I'm sorry, Hunter, but he doesn't have a unique perspective. He has fucking Stockholm Syndrome for a giant psychotic murder hobo dragon. You need to get this kid some psychological help and some counseling or something. He hasn't overcome his trauma or anything. It's just morphed into something much, much worse. And it doesn't help that the game tries to take Nata seriously with all of the other characters when his entire viewpoint of Arkveld is just entirely wrong due to him projecting himself onto Arkveld. Arkveld was never allowed to live or make a choice, and he is actively suffering and going insane because his unique anatomy in absorbing the energy, life, I guess, from other creatures using the chains on his body caused him to overcome his guardian programming and fueled a hunger and a desire to feed, which he can never actually fulfill due to his body not being capable of doing so. Now he just mindlessly rips corpses to shreds in a vain attempt to satisfy a hunger that he will never be able to. It's really sad. Like, I wish that he could be better, but his anatomy kind of just doomed him to this state. Almost as sad as the fact that the narrative seems like it forgot that Nata was found by the guild years before this expedition to find his people, especially near the end of the game where he recounts the journey that he's been on as if it's the first time he's ever experienced nature. Like, what was the Hunters Guild doing with this kid for the several years that they had him under their protection? Did they just lock him in a padded white room with a straitjacket or something? They clearly didn't give him any kind of psychological help or counseling, that's for sure. And then another weird thing that I personally just didn't like is that despite Nata feeling like Guardian Arkveld should, be free to live and make its own choices, because, it was born a Guardian, it didn't have a choice in anything. Kinda sad. He does not give a single fuck about any of the other Guardians who aren't mindlessly killing and attempting to feed on other creatures. These other Guardians have just as much of a right to live as Arkveld does, if not more so due to their non-ecosystem annihilating tendencies. But you literally kill another Guardian monster in Ebony Odogaron right on the way to confront Arkveld, after Nata has had his whole, breakdown about which of us is worse. And Nata does not seem to care at all that you kill it. If he at least had a moment where he's like, oh hey Hunter, why can't we sneak away from it or something? Can we do something else? Do we really have to kill this Guardian monster? Then it would have at least been a little bit less out of left field when he had his episode over Arkveld, because he would have clearly shown that he doesn't feel comfortable with killing the Guardians once he learns about his people and the true nature of the Guardians, and, all of the wrongs that his ancestors have done in creating them. But nah, fuck the Guardians. We only have Stockholm Syndrome for Arkveld because he attacked my village and killed very many people and gave me god-tier levels of trauma and PTSD. And it's not even like you could have made this setup work where Nata, doesn't want to kill Arkveld anymore. You just needed to actually develop it instead of just having this sudden flip 90% of the way through the story. Have there be more Guardian encounters and have Nata have to grapple with the guilt of what the Guardians mean and what his ancestors did. And to complain even more about the Arkveld moment. Immediately after slaying the Guardian Arkveld, Nata does a little hand sign of respect or saying thank you to Arkveld, or I don't know, just a general sign of respect or something. But then immediately after that, they reveal that there's an even stronger guardian that was the ancient civilization's ultimate weapon and what led to the downfall of the ancient civilization. And then they give Nata the final say in what they do about this oncoming calamity, since the pendant that Nata has is special and it can counteract the ancient energy resources. Using his pendant, they could delete the source of ancient energy that sustains the guardians and also all of the surrounding ecosystems that you visited throughout the game, effectively killing off the still dormant ultimate weapon before it awakens, or let it awaken and try to hunt it down, which could result in the deaths of many people in the ensuing battle and aftermath. And at this point, I have expected Nata to say, actually, the ancient weapon just wants to live and be free, and then just chuck the pendant off a cliff so that nobody could use it. But no, now he decides to delete the ancient energy resource, and that he himself wants to be the one to do it personally, so that he can fulfill his people's legacy or something like that, since the pendant was a memento of his late father who had the same role within the Keepers. He was the guy that was going to delete the ancient energy resource if that was ever necessary. And that's kind of what bothers me the most. It's just like, not even a switch up. It's a switch up and then another switch up and then another switch up and then another switch up, like all in the span of like 20 minutes of the game. He didn't just stumble, he did like 27 backflips and then like crashed into a solid block of concrete. He wants to kill Arkveld, then he learns his people's history and how ethically fucked up it was for them to create the ancient guardians. But he's still completely fine with the hunter killing other guardians, but then he flips out the moment that Arkveld is the target because, oh, Arkveld shouldn't die because he just wants to live and he's literally me. But then immediately after is fine again with just killing all of the guardians by deleting the dragon torch, which is the source of all of the ancient energy that sustains the region and what all of the guardians survive off of and everything. Which is like, fine. Children are stupid and emotional and don't know about the world. But that's the entire point of Nata being with the hunters, so that he can learn about the world from the Hunters Guild. I would expect him to be emotional and make mistakes. It's just that the game takes him too seriously and have the other characters baby him. They should be mentors to Nata. They should be teaching him about why it's necessary for them to do stuff like slaying the Arkveld, but they just kind of don't. They just baby him so much in a lot of these scenes that it just really takes away from this dynamic that I enjoyed of having him be this young child who doesn't know anything about the world, learning about the natural order and about the ecosystems and the ecology of all of these places from the Handler, the Hunters Guild. Honestly, it seems like the Hunters Guild just didn't even do anything with him for like the 5 years that they had him before the events of the game. But the Hunter and Alma definitely do. And it's understandable that there are points where they would have to let him explore his feelings himself, but that also means there are moments in the story where they shouldn't, where they need to take a more direct role in telling him, no, this is how the world works. This is why we have to kill Arkveld. It's fucked up, but we have to do it. It just like ruined what could have been a really powerful character moment. And I mean, you get like a really badass moment at the end of the game I don't want to spoil, that I feel like makes up for Nata having his episode and serves as like one of the coolest finales to a Monster Hunter game. And it's all set up well, and it like easily redeems that moment, but like imagine how disappointing the story of the game would have been if that wasn't in the game. A lot of people don't know the story who haven't played it and are just watching this because I don't know, probably won't know what I'm talking about, but if you know, then you know. Just imagine if that scene wasn't in the game and then the game just ended on Nata having his Arkveld is literally me moment, and then that's just the end of the, you know, main storyline. It does go a little bit further in the post-game, but, you know, the main storyline is done in low rank. And then after that, it's, you know, high rank, more difficult versions of monsters. You get, like, kind of like a post-game story, but it's not nearly as detailed as everything that came before. Like, they should have just explained to him about how his trauma is influencing his worldview and his reasoning the moment that he started his whole I don't know which of us is worse thing. Or have, you know, an additional cutscene between there and when you have the Arkveld moment, where they actually do that afterwards, after letting him, like, explore his own thoughts for a bit. They bring him over and they're like, hey, what your people do is like good. They're trying to protect these creatures that otherwise would have had to been exterminated because the ancient people 1,000 years ago fucked up. But your people in the current day are doing a pretty cool thing, actually. I don't know. I just wish that the characters, the hunter, the handler, everyone were actually like mentor characters to Nata. Because despite the game wanting it to make it seem like they really kind of aren't. Oh yeah, and then one more thing. Afterwards in the post-credits scene, Nata finds an Arkveld egg, and he is really happy that Arkveld might be free and find his place in the world again, despite all of the problems that he should know could arise from just suddenly introducing an extinct apex predator into an existing ecosystem. And then the funnier thing is that later in the high-rank post-game story, Nata is actually an interesting and developed character, at least a lot more than he was before. In the post-game story, he's using what he's learned from the hunter and the guild to do his own investigation into the Arkveld egg after, you know, the hunter found it and showed it to him in like the post-credits scene. And then he actually tracks it down on his own. Since, you know, this new Arkveld that was born from the egg, which shouldn't have happened because Guardian monsters weren't able to reproduce, but like Arkveld just absorbs energy and overwrites its own Guardian tendencies and says fuck that, and somehow laid an egg, despite there only being one of them. I guess Arkveld can just reproduce asexually or something. But once Nata knows where it is, you then go with Nata to find the Arkveld to see if it's, you know, not insane like the last one, except you find it and you find that it actually has gone insane murder hobo mode, but this time, instead of due to being a guardian, it did actually successfully revert back to being a regular Arkveld. But this time, there is a virus that makes monsters go insane that a different monster called Gore Magala has introduced to the ecosystem. And then this virus has made Arkveld go insane, and Nata actually asks the hunter to slay Arkveld for its own sake. A mercy killing just like the last time with the Guardian Arkveld. And so this time Nata has actually overcome his trauma and Stockholm Syndrome, and he can recognize that Arkveld is not just a danger to the local ecosystem, but is also suffering itself. It's cool character development if only his initial Arkveld is literally me, and he just wants to be free and live arc could have been done much better. Then this actually could have been a really cool moment and a good metric for his growth as a character. Like, just in the middle of the game, when you're still hunting Arkveld, have his hatred of Arkveld turn into this weird fascination with Arkveld instead. Like a cutscene where you see it fighting against another apex predator, where instead of wanting to throw a rock at it and kill it, he just wants to watch it, and he just finds it strangely beautiful or fascinating or something. Just to plant the seeds for the moment later where he is completely against killing Arkveld, once he learns about Arkveld's history, the history of the Guardian monsters, and his own people, and everything like that. That would really allow him to firmly put Arkveld, at least in Nata's view, as a victim who was finally able to live free and make choices for himself. And that could actually pave the way for a much more emotional and, you know, deserved interaction when you finally find Arkveld on top of the pile of corpses, where the hunter and Alma and everyone realizes that they need to slay Guardian Arkveld to protect the natural order. Even though it was an extinct species and it's the last of its kind, and, you know, everything fucked up with the Guardians, they need to make the choice to slay it. That could have given that moment a lot more emotional weight, rather than feeling like it's some kind of arbitrary, you know, fight emotional outburst, like, no, we can't do this type of moment, which it kind of turned out to be, because it wasn't built up that well. And I mean, this just doesn't even get into Arkveld and how actually interesting Arkveld is as a creature, and as like a character, kind of, with its role in the story, and how much of a victim Arkveld really is, because its very anatomy basically dooms it towards extinction due to bioaccumulation. I mean, it went extinct before, so obviously it's not very good at, you know, the whole not dying thing, but I actually thought it was pretty cool that they actually brought up bioaccumulation of the virus as the reason that it, you know, the new non-Guardian Arkveld went insane, since he essentially got a distilled turbo version of the virus due to how he just absorbs it from other monsters whenever he fights them, even if he's not feeding on that monster, which is normally how bioaccumulation occurs. Any, you know, toxins, etc. get more distilled as they move up the food chain, but because Arkveld absorbs energy as a means of fighting, even just fighting against another monster in a territorial dispute means that Arkveld is going to get like a bonus dose of these toxins. That's probably why it went extinct in the first place, and why it's probably fucked in the New World as well, because it was extinct for thousands of years, and that means there are now thousands of years of evolutions of new toxins and new diseases and such that Arkveld has absolutely no resistance to, that it is going to be getting an extra turbo dose of whenever it, you know, fights against another monster. But yeah, this video wasn't about Arkveld in particular, it's just me crying about the development of a child character that knew nothing of the world and is coming to terms with the sins of his ancestors and what they mean, as well as struggling with trauma and PTSD that the Hunters Guild is obviously not helping with, and just kind of nitpicking about some specific things with it, because I can easily see why people hate the character and what they could have done better. But I do like him. I think he got a little bit of undeserved hate. It's just that one moment, that one 60-second cutscene kind of just tanked his entire character. Even people who were on the fence, they went to the other side of I hate Nata the moment that cutscene ended. So yeah, that's all for today. If you enjoyed, follow for more. I'll try to upload more regularly, and thanks for watching. See ya.